This is probably the deepest chat we're going to have on this channel for a while. Welcome to my testimony video. My name is Janae. It's nice to meet you. I'm a creative, and that's mostly what I'll be sharing on this channel, my creative journey. For a moment, I want to say that I have wanted to create a YouTube for a very long time, and it is truly by grace that I am finally entering this moment, and I'm super excited. um, and that's why I want to start with the testimony, because it's just my way of honoring God for bringing me to this point in my life. Because without Him, I wouldn't be putting myself out here like this. My testimony is going to share different things that I struggled with in the past, including social anxiety, shyness, depression. I'm going to do my best for this video to not be triggering, but of course I am going to talk about different topics that could be. So how do you have a come to Jesus moment when you were already raised in the faith? That's my background, is that I was raised inside of the church, the Christian church, and I have honestly felt like God has been with me my whole life. I used to pray and things when I was younger, but I still always had like a bad taste in my mouth when it came to church, because it was something that we were forced to do. I was learning different ways of God, but nothing was really sinking in. I just knew that He existed, or believed He existed, and I lived my life and tried to be the best that I could be. So I am age 28 right now, and God found me at age 19. That is a year out of high school. I graduated high school, and I was very glad to do so. School had always been not my favorite style of learning. I love to learn, but I feel like the testing and school did not offer my style of learning. And I was not excited to be having to go to school again, to college. I had not, while I was in high school, been looking for colleges. I was really kind of in my own world, just kind of going with the flow of life. And that continued into college. I went attempting to double major, hoping to be an educator and also an artist. And just at this age, 19, in school, something I didn't want to be in again, and starting out for this career path that I wasn't sure was going to lead me to where I ultimately wanted to be, the enemy, Satan, had just really started creating a lot of stress in my life through different situations at this point. I changed schools a nice amount of times growing up. So I never really had those friends from elementary all the way to high school. I always had a close knit group for each school that I was in, so I never felt like I didn't have friends. But when I would go home, mostly I would only connect with my friends at school, or if they invited me somewhere, or if I invited them somewhere for an event. But other than that, I wasn't calling friends and telling them about how I feel and stuff like that. So my friendships, though they were super fun and they did not feel surface level, I think if you don't share your problems with somebody, your friendships kind of are still surface level. But we had fun and we did care about each other. And they would ask certain things. I was just at this point where I did not know how to communicate a whole lot of things. So yeah, when I went off to college, my friendships just kind of dismantled on their own, and I think that's mostly, I had this insecurity in myself that was like, they're probably having fun at the school that they went to, so why are you calling them as if you're not making friends at your own school, where that could have been true, but they still probably wanted to keep in touch with me. And I don't know, I just used to be in my head a lot about things that probably were not. Okay, let me rewind for a second. I not only grew up feeling like kind of like the outsider because I was the new person at school from different times, and when I, like I said, I went home and I didn't continue to connect with people, but I also felt like the outsider from being the new person, from also having bully encounters, and then also I have I've grown I've had a chronic illness since birth, which is called sickle cell. A lot of people know about it. A lot of people don't. It is when sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease is when like over 50% of your blood cells are not shaped circle like they're supposed to, but they're sickled. And they flow through your body in a way that they can get connected, and that causes a lot of chronic pain and other issues. And the anemia means that you already have a low blood count, so that causes a lot of fatigue. I used to actually fall asleep in a lot of my classes, is in high school mostly. And I did not know that that was related to my sickle cell growing up. I just thought I was tired, but it was actually related to my sickle cell. And I have another story like that that I'm gonna share in the continued video. But my sickle cell is something that I never used to share with people, never talked about. So that also internally used to exclude me from people. Because if I'm invited to an event where I know I'm gonna get tired at, might get sick at, I'm probably just gonna pass on it altogether. And I don't know, just it does something inside of you mentally because you know that you have to take care of yourself in ways that other people aren't going to understand unless you explain the issue. And even when you explain the issue, I found that it's just an experience that other people don't really get until you're in it, because it's not a disability. It's more like being sick every day. You know, when you're sick, you're usually stuck in bed. I'm explaining it this way because I've had a lot of people that kind of think that it's a disability, and I feel like there's a better way to describe it. And even though that can start to try to help you to understand that, oh yeah, this is a completely different way of living. This is something we have to be considerate about for this person, but not in a way that limits the person, of course. But that's what I'm saying. It's actually a better way to think about it, because sickle cell can limit you in certain ways. You try to take things and you go to the doctor and stuff so that you can head off your symptoms to live a better life. But when you do encounter those crisis moments, it's really like it's being sick. And a lot of people, most of the people I know with sickle cell disease have actually been people who have gone in and out of the hospital months at a time every year, that I've known. And that's a testimony in and of itself, that I have not been in and out of the hospital because of my sickle cell, but I do have crises that I'm able to treat at home through pain medication. All right. That was a rabbit hole. I do feel like it's important to know that about the disease, because that does put you in the mindset of, I already know so many people who they say stuff kind of jokingly, kind of for real, but they like, oh, if I had to live that way, I wouldn't live at all, or this and that. It is a different way of life. It is a different way of life. But going back to the part of me not communicating, but going back to me not really communicating well with the people who cared about me, just really because I didn't want to put my burdens on people. And then now we talk so much about mental health, which is great. And people know to seek therapy. But even back then, I didn't want to seek therapy because I wasn't sure of how much you can say in therapy. So I had a fear of therapy. I had a fear that, for one, to actually accept that you need therapy meant something was wrong with you, which is why it's so great that we're getting out of that shame of you needing help with your mental health. And now too, like I said, I didn't know how much you could say in therapy. Just the increased awareness about mental health issues have now taught me that a lot of the issues that I was having back then were actually common, and a lot of people thought the way that I thought and felt the way that I felt, but I didn't know it because it wasn't something that we discussed. So when you're in this mentality of feeling like you're alone with your issues, and that you're just such you're abnormal to the rest of society, you can, at least for me, I developed the fear of going to the therapy because I felt like they would escalate the situation like, oh, this person's crazy, she's not fitting into the regular society, she's saying that she's suicidal, and a sense of loneliness, and she doesn't want to be in school, but that's like the only way to progress in life. It was a stressful time, right? Now, where were my distractions at this time? I think that's a part of what really led to the meltdown, is because I didn't have a lot of outside things that could entertain me. Because I had already knew a little bit about God, I always had kind of a conviction when it came to the party lifestyle. So in college, that's what I'm saying, you would think you would be having fun and going out and doing this and that. But one, because of my sickle cell and stuff, not really want to keep up with that. And then also with my convictions, not really want to, because that night mean it includes drinking, it includes doing things that, I just, God was kind of already speaking to me at that time, like, this isn't something that represents me. Even if the moments were clean fun, which they weren't, for the college scene and the stuff that I'm talking about, but I just had already inside reached this point where it was like, nothing is fulfilling me at this point because of what I was going through. So I've just shared a little bit of like how I thought, how I grew up. That I'm 28 and that he found me at age 19, college, right? I actually had a good dormy, dorm roommate, and we used to eat together a lot, go to events together a lot. And I remember we were walking and there were black flags along the campus lawn. And I asked her, I was like, what are these black flags for? What are these black flags for? And she was like, oh, they're for Suicide Awareness Month. September is Suicide Awareness Month. And I just remember thinking to myself as I walked with her, oh my goodness, this, the people, basically, here I am feeling suicidal, and I don't even know that people are doing stuff to try to reach people like me. The people like me, I felt in that moment, we're so in our own head and out of the loop that unless you directly come to us, we don't understand. Like, it didn't reach me. I remember going back to my dorm room after that night and still thinking about it, like, this topic of suicide, this floating around all of a sudden now. It was something I already felt internally, but now it was external. I felt like, okay, other people are dealing with how I feel, and it just gave me a little bit of courage to seek out therapy. And since I was on campus, I knew I wouldn't have the judgment of anybody. It was something I could do privately. I don't have to tell my folks that I'm going to see a therapist. I'm not going to tell my dorm mate that I'm going to see a therapist. I can just literally walk to wherever the therapist's office is. And I remember when I went in, I just spilled like everything on her because it was that thing. That's why I say, when you have this buildup inside of your head, that by the time that that if you have to go to therapy, you have to be some type of a crazy person. That's how I felt going in. So after I spilled all that on her, I just felt just like so crazy. But like I said, I was there because the conversation was alive and was welcomed. But she ended up telling me basically that other people go through what I go through and other people feel that way. There's even like a Bible verse that says something similar. It's like your brothers and sisters in Christ are suffering the same things that you are. And back then, that was like the worst thing that, the worst thing that you could tell me is that other people felt what I felt. That was the worst thing that you could tell me back then, because it's like it made it feel like there was like no way out. If adults are feeling this way, and if the people I love are crying in private and feeling this way, that was like the worst thing that you could tell me back then, because it was a pain that I didn't wish on anybody. Something that I hear sometimes is that people say that committing suicide is a selfish act. And I want to be a little insider to you that a lot of people who actually go through with that, they believe that they're relieving people of a burden. And I had definitely reached that point. I remember, so I had gone home in October. So you got August, September, and I had gone home from campus in October to avoid a Halloween party that was coming up. I already had bad feelings about it. I just didn't want to do it. And over the break, though, I rewatched the movie I had watched in the past, and it was The Fault in Our Stars. I did not enjoy this movie for many reasons, though, but I decided to rewatch it over this time that I was away. Bad decision. I still didn't enjoy it. But this time it also triggered me because I was just trying to see if I missed something that everybody else enjoyed. And then I ended up seeing something worse the second time. But there was this scene where she was having an episode. I'm going to call it episode. And she was laying on the bed, and her mom, she started crying, and her mom, her parents, I believe, but specifically her mom, came running into the room to help her. And I remember in that moment, while I was watching this movie, the enemy just planted into my mind. And I'm going to plug the scene if I can find it. This is the way your life makes other people feel, makes the people who love you feel. How wicked is that to say to somebody? Now, how terrible is that to say to somebody? But if you saw what like the expression on that mom's face, that is the reason some people actually go that route, because they believe that they're relieving people of that burden. God has just shown me the worth of my life despite my relativity to others. My life has value on my bad days and on my good days. And there are people who see my value even on my bad days. And there are people who won't. Some people who, like if I kind of just a bad personality person who God can reach and save, he loves everybody. But a person who puts more bad out into the world, their life has value to God and to the world, regardless of, because that's just the power. That's just the power that's inside of life. That's yeah. That's what he's shown me. And life is something that can it changes so much. And I've skipped the part that I wanted to mention. I had also something that was happening to me on campus was that I was aching. Like I said earlier, like I haven't experienced a whole lot of crises throughout my life, but on campus, I was having these nights that I didn't. I did not call home and tell them about that I was having this. I would just take medicine. But I had so many crises like every night, and it was just it became a thing of living like in pain. So it wasn't just me not desiring to go to school, and but it was like life was just like physically wearing on me. And back then I did not know. That's what I'm saying. It's so dangerous to not know certain things. But back then I didn't know that fitness was something that could trigger a sickle cell crisis. What was happening inside that I didn't know was that walking the campus size like that every day was a form of fitness for me, because I wasn't taking flights of stairs every single day and walking long distances to classes and stuff. And also, I actually was working out a little bit inside of my room, doing sit ups and stuff like that. And I didn't even know that that was triggering me to have these crises every single night. Now I know different things that trigger your sickle cell, which could be the weather, too hot or too cold, also fitness, other things. But at the time, I did not know why I was having these crises every night. So I'm just sad inside, sad, physically being stressed out. And then I got this news from this lady that everybody in life is going through different stuff. And I'm just like, me personally, I cannot continue like this. Something that the enemy planted in me also after that session with the counselor was that I'm overreacting to my situation. There are people who have it worse than me. I'm just overly sensitive. Okay, so I took what the enemy was saying to me, like it was like an internal war. It was like an internal war. It was like an argument of him saying, "You're overreacting. You just want attention." All this type of stuff. And at the time, I didn't know it was a separate enemy. I felt like it was me to me. And I'm like, why are you saying these things about yourself? Your situation is real. You do feel stressed out, and you don't know if you can truly live, you continue to live your life like this. And I don't know, I just started beating myself up. And I remember that was like one of the first times to kind of silence that voice of somebody telling me that my situation wasn't real when I knew it was real. That was like one of the first temptations that I really had to self harm. Now, I've always kind of thought about full out suicidal moment, but self harm is something that most people do to focus on a pain area instead of the other things that they're thinking about. And that was the moment that I had that night. But before that, it was something I really didn't do because it was for me too painful. But in this night, the pain of the voices and the pain of the situation did lead me to self-harm. And I remember in this moment of self-harm drawing blood for the first time. Anytime in the past I had done it, um, it left a scar, but it didn't break, it broke probably skin, but not flesh. But in this moment of breaking through to flesh and drawing blood and seeing that for the first time, that is when the voices that I used to just wrestle in my mind with thinking was me, to me, I knew that it was like demonic voices at that point, because they were suddenly outside of me. I was caring about myself, what I had just done to myself. But then the voices were just saying like, "Oh my gosh, so you're not overreacting. You really are. crazy. And that's just what they started chanting down on me, is like, you really are crazy. You might actually do it. You might actually commit suicide, because if you just did that, you're out of control. You are, it was just like a surrounding moment of, what have I done? Fear. And in that fear, I truly did feel like I had lost complete recognition and control of who I was. And I truly did, in that moment, become completely unsure of what I would do next. And to help, goodness gracious, and to help, of course, the enemy was just like, it was just this parade of this wicked, fearful voice. So I'm being taunted with this threat of actually losing control and losing myself, losing my mind, that I felt like that moment could be it. And so in that moment, I cried out to God. I cried out to God in that moment because I knew his name. I knew his name. I believed in God. I knew his name is Jesus. I had grown up in a Christian church, and I cried out to him, and he answered me. He answered me. And I knew it was him because the voices of taunting, it was like I was in this moment on my knees, crying out to God. And the moment I did it, it was truly like a light surrounded me. And in this surrounding of light, it was like the demons were on the outside trying to speak into it, but it kept pushing them away and making it more and more silent. And this is how I know it was a God thing and not me, because the the enemy was really saying, you really think that helped you? You really think that did something? You're crazy. And I was doubting because of what I was hearing from him. But then once again, it was like the light kind of did this like bursting thing again. And then the voices were gone. And then it was like I started to hear God at that time saying to me, not to worry about it. I got up with peace, complete peace. And then the enemy tried to come in one more time. Like, but the peace was mine at that point. I wasn't doubting no more. So when I heard the voice, I still had peace. And then the voice was gone again. It was amazing. It was a completely supernatural moment. And it began, what it began in me was, it began a hunger for God more. God actually, I think at that point too, he realized that I was at the end of myself, and that I was his at that point. I was his. He claimed me at that point. And he had started placing, he had always done this my whole life, was placing himself inside of my life in different ways. But at this point, it was like he wasn't just placing it hoping I'd catch on, but it was like he was my mentor at that point. And he had started putting different things inside of my life to help me grow. I had found on YouTube um, really biblical teachers who, the things they were saying made me pull out my real Bible. And so this all was like within like a week or two, that I just really started listening to pastors and also digging into scripture for myself. And I started to discover who God was. And I entered this honeymoon state because God had saved me. I realized, like, oh my goodness, this isn't just a God that you pray to. Um, this is a God who is he's your father. He's your father. God wants to have such a personal relationship with us, that would protect us from so many of those different moments. You know, the thing that I still encounter in life now, I still encounter a lot of people who try to speak demonic types of things over me or try to put me through bad situations, but God is still always right there rooting for me and pulling me out of those situations and just coaching me through it, honestly. But the difference now from then is none of that chaos is in me anymore. It's around me. So I still deal with the world stuff, but I have so much peace on the inside. He is light. God is light. God is love. And he's a wisdom. He's going to teach you so much that can change your life. And yeah, God is purpose. um yeah. This is my testimony. Oh, the only thing I haven't said is that, yeah, I've had so many more testimonial moments since then. God has protected me in so many different ways. If y'all want to know more about that, then you can definitely ask me. I may share in the future. I don't know if I'll do it here or another place. But that's the story that I wanted to tell you because that is where that first transformation happened. Um, yeah. But I'm thankful that he's once he's with you, he's not going to forsake you. So I'm thankful to have all these other testimonial moments to show that he still continues with me, and that he's alive. Some people don't know that God is real, but he's definitely real. Subscribe to see my next video. Likes of you related to any parts of this video. Blessings.